morning, I'm Martina Rogato and this is CARE, Climate Action for Resilient Empowerment, the joint podcast of the Global Thinking Foundation and Human Rights International Corner on climate action for resilient empowerment, a series of interviews about climate change, human rights, gender equality from different perspectives. And is a project with the patronage of the Women's 7 Italy, the official G7 engagement group on gender equality and women empowerment. And today I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Lara Scarpitta from the OSCE. Welcome, Lara, and thank you so much for your availability. Lara Scarpitta is the Senior Adviser on Gender Issues and Head of the Gender Issues Program in the Office of the Secretary General. The OSCE stands for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and Lara has a background in diplomacy, peace mediation, as well as the women, peace and security agenda. And today we will talk about different topics related to gender and also climate change. Again, thank you so much, Lara.
Thank you, Martina, for this opportunity to join you today for this podcast.
A pleasure for us. And how is gender mainstreaming reflected in global climate negotiations?
Thank you for this truly excellent question. Let me begin with more of a general observation. Why do we need to speak about gender mainstreaming in climate negotiations? Well, there are two main reasons. First of all, climate change is not gender neutral. The effect of climate change is different for women and men. And the research at the global level, and we have extensive research at the global level, has clearly provided ample evidence that women and girls are impacted disproportionately by climate change. And with disproportionately, I mean that women and girls very often bear the brunt of the economic and of the social impact of climate change. But despite bearing this brunt, women are very often excluded from the majority of climate-related negotiations and all the decision-making tables, for example, in international fora such as the COP. And this brings me to my second point. The exclusion of women means the perspective of 50% of the population is de facto not taken into account when we are discussing climate change, when we are discussing adaptation measures, when we are discussing policies to fight climate change. And this exclusion means that the policies and the actions that are taken by governments are not effective. They don't respond to the needs of the whole population. And this, of course, makes them less sustainable and less effective. So going back to your question, gender mainstreaming in climate change negotiations is essential. The current situation is that women are still not represented in climate negotiation as much as they should be. However, there is a good news. And the good news is that we have a framework to push for gender mainstreaming forward. Not only we have awareness, but we also have progress being made in the past decade also on the legal framework. And we went from the 2014 Lima work program on gender, which has promoted gender balance and gender responsive climate policies, to the 2023 COP, which has established a formal framework for gender responsive climate action. We've also seen an increase in gender disaggregated data, and this is very important in order to be able to put in place effective policies. But also, we've also seen much more awareness for policy change that adapts to different needs of women and men. There is also much more in place, many more initiatives for gender responsive budgeting for climate finance and adaptation funds. And also, we've also seen a modest increase in the representation of women in climate change negotiating teams. So there has been some progress, not as much progress as we would like to be. We are still not where we would like to be and where we need to be. And we still have obstacles and implementation gaps. But I think now with this awareness, we are much more advanced than we were even a couple of years ago, and we need to build on the progress, even if small, that has been made in the past decade. Over to you.
Wow, thank you so much for this overview. And what initiatives has the OSCE put in place to strengthen women's leadership in the green transition?
Just to put it a little bit into context, at OSCE, our focus on climate action is through the lens of comprehensive security. So we view climate change as a potential threat multiplier and a conflict driver. Therefore, for us, tackling climate change is a key component of our collective regional security. In this context, and considering that for the OSCE, gender equality is also a cornerstone for our comprehensive security, in the last few years, we've begun to look much more closely at the gender aspect of climate change to ensure that our policies and our actions are successful and meet the needs of the whole population. And just to give you some examples, in the past year alone, a big focus of my team, the Gender Issues Program, has been to look more closely at how we can empower women and support their leadership in climate actions. And this year in particular, we launched a high-level program, is a mentoring program in partnership with She Changes Climate, which is targeting 20 selected women leaders, climate experts and peace builders from across the OSCE region and Afghanistan, as well as our partners for cooperation in the Mediterranean region and Southeast Asia. And this program is designed to support leadership building and access to decision-making of these women and promote their active inclusion in climate negotiations. But we've also gone beyond, and we have tried to go beyond what is mainstreaming actions when it comes to climate change. Just to give you a couple of examples, in 2023, we launched a pioneering work on the nexus between gender, corruptions, and access to natural resources, including land and water, which, as you know, are areas which are very often impacted by climate change. And this emerging nexus presents really some really interesting elements to explore, particularly in the context of climate change. We also launched a dedicated study on gender responsive and disability inclusive disaster risk reduction. And in the coming months, we will also launch a paper which is focused on the role of women leadership and participation in the context of climate change. And what we aim to provide is a really concrete assessment of the state of play across the OSCE region. These are just some concrete examples of how the OSCE is looking more specifically at the nexus between gender equality and climate action, and also what we do concretely to support women leadership and women inclusion in climate change decision-making and adaptation policies.
Thank you so much, and congratulations for all of these global actions, so inspirational for us and as an activist. And considering all of your expertise, I'm very curious to know what you have learned from the women and girls you work with, especially in fragile contexts. I'm very curious to know about your personal experience in all of these actions and projects.
Well, I have learned immensely in my career from the women I work with, especially those in conflict settings or fragile contexts. And I'm thinking here of Syria, Yemen, and now also Ukraine. But since our time is limited, I will focus on two truly important lessons. Problem solving and resilience are two of the key lessons for me. In terms of problem solving skills, throughout my professional career, which now spans over 20 years, I've never met one woman lacking disability. And when I say never, I really mean never. Women in fragile settings, women living in conflict settings face for sure and always resource scarcity. They have to face double care and household responsibilities, and very often, as we know, the exclusion from the decision-making table. Yet these women have the true finger on the pulse of their communities because of their traditional role, and very often the most and best informed about the needs of their communities and can really develop creative and grounded solutions. And this is one of the many reasons why excluding them from decision-making and peace-building initiative is a colossal mistake. Women really know what is needed in their communities, and therefore they're the best place to provide answers to meet the needs of their communities. The second skill, as I mentioned, is resilience. So women, they transfer this resilience to their family structures, to their communities. We know how much family structures and communities are devastated by conflict, but women hold the fil rouge. They are able to hold the communities together, to hold the families together through this incredible resilience. Also, women, we see they are, and I've seen them firsthand, at the front line of supporting these communities affected by conflict, be it through humanitarian assistance or because they work with civil society on supporting the survivors of gender-based violence. And this resilience is what allows us and allows them to rebuild the societies after conflict and really lay the foundations for long-term peace building, reconciliation, and trust building within communities. Unfortunately, their work is very often too invisible. It's essential, but it's invisible. And our role is to ensure that this becomes visible and becomes they are given the opportunities to bring their perspective forward also in international fora. But our role is also to make sure that their work is supported politically, but most importantly financially, because only through the adequate support they're then able to carry out essential work in support of their communities.
Thank you so much for the job you are doing, and also for the opportunity to listen to you, to your experience, and to share with all of us our knowledge. It was a pleasure to discover the overview on this topic, your projects, the OSCE jobs, and your inspirational ideas and point of view. So this is CARE, Climate Action for Resilient Empowerment, and we had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Lara Scarpitta from the OSCE. So again, thank you so much, and let me say, catch you in the next episode. See you next time.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure being with you today. Thank you.